Hello and welcome back to AB in Focus. I'm delighted to be joined today by Arif Yahya, the head of retail and e-commerce MENA for TikTok. Arif, thank you for joining me and welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having us.
So obviously as yourself the head of retail for TikTok, I think it might make sense if we start there. How would you think TikTok, what kind of effect does it have on the retail landscape and how are you engaging with retail consumers?
I think the retail and e-commerce industry overall has been the key industry to revolutionize and redefine itself over the past couple of years, be it in offline retail, pure play e-commerce, and even omni-channel retail. And where we had a place to play within this equation has been in setting the stage for community commerce, which sounds new, but goes back to the origins of how human beings have always gone about commerce. And it's always been an experience which was very interactional. We used to go to markets basically and haggle and speak with one another, have different conversations, build relationships, and all of these different relationships and interactions used to lead to trust. And that's what a community was. If you go back to how this evolved over the years, it became slightly less personable. And TikTok came into the equation with all of the changes now to bring back that element of community because of the nature of how the platform works, which I'm sure we'll get to speak a little bit more about.
So do you think social media has then altered the expectations of consumers and by extension also TikTok itself?
So as TikTok, we don't think of our platform as part of social media, and I know it might be a bit surprising, but in general, social media, they operate based on social graphs. And on social graph, basically, you are fed content based on the people you are following, right? A network of people. And that's basically the way it works, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. However, the way TikTok works is based on a content graph, which means that you, as Matthew, have specific interests. So regardless whether you're following me as Arif or not, if the content I'm posting about is relevant to you, then you are likely to potentially see my content. So because that you're given this content that is based on your interest and based on the content that you're browsing, we don't consider this to be a social graph kind of experience. And this is why the content you will see is based on the communities that you follow and the communities that you are a part of. And you're likely to engage with that kind of content. And that kind of engagement usually leads you to being interested in products that you discover. So it's product discovery that is fueled by highly engaged communities.
And then how, from the side of the retail industry itself, how do they then engage from a content perspective with consumers?
So from the side of the industry, brands are really tapping into the power of community commerce on our platform in a variety of different ways. But first and foremost, in terms of understanding what are the interests out there, what are the trends that are happening, tapping into them, having organic presence on our platform, combining it with obviously paid advertising peaks where they are able to reach their target audiences. And we're seeing a shift from moving away from the traditional marketing funnel, which starts in awareness, consideration, and then ends up in conversion, and realizing that that's a bit of an outdated way of looking at how real consumers are entering the purchase journey, because sometimes you see something from a brand on TikTok that you might not necessarily be aware of, but that instant interaction leads to a purchase, which traditionally you associate with the end of the marketing funnel. So we like to think of it as a flywheel, like an infinite loop, as opposed to a pyramid or a marketing funnel in that sense. And brands are invited to join that flywheel at any point in the journey. And it's our responsibility, obviously, and our privilege to be able to work with brands and partners in the region to help them understand what works on TikTok and make sure that they're embracing the right strategies to deliver the results that they're looking for.
And then the other side as well, we obviously can't talk just about brands with TikTok. There's a huge number of creators on the platform. Yeah. How do you help leverage those creators and how do you help support those creators? Because they're creating the content that you're suggesting to your own users.
So I'd first like to say thank you because you call them creators versus influencers. This is something
Not
we're
a fan
very
of the term influencers.
So, I mean, again, nothing wrong with the term. Influencer is quite an old term. Like it goes back all the way to 1760 from your country. There was a potter called Wedgwood, and he did a set of teacups for the Queen of England. And then he marketed himself as the potter of Her Royal Highness. And so he used the Queen as one of the early influencers. But influencer implies that there's a huge following base, there's a stature, right? Regardless of the content necessarily. Like traditionally influencers were A-class celebrities, people with large number of followers on social media platforms. On TikTok, we don't really look at the number of followers, we look at the type of the content and how it pertains basically to different categories and subcategories and niche interests, which is again going back to the content graph and that interest-based way of doing things versus followership. So creators are very important for us, regardless of how many followers they have. And we have continued to invest resources in the form, most recently, of TikTok Creator Marketplace, which is a platform that democratizes the process of brands and creators finding one another. If you are a brand, you can access TikTok Creator Marketplace. You can filter by market, by interest, and you can get in touch directly with the creators without us necessarily being supervising or being part of the conversation between the brand and the creator. We believe that the more brands work with creators, it's the better for the entire ecosystem. We care very much about our creators and continuing to support them on our platform. And we also care to help the brands and the partners deliver the KPIs that they are looking for. And we know for a fact, and this is all of the case studies that we've recently released, prove that creator-led assets work much better than traditional advertising assets when it comes to our platform. So if you work with a creator and you're a brand, you are likely to deliver better conversion rate, better sales in general, and we keep nourishing that ecosystem through different initiatives.
Okay, so tie this conversation to the Middle East specifically. We mentioned a couple of different markets there. How does the Middle East differ for TikTok in terms of the kind of content perhaps that its audience likes to consume? And also, how does that relationship that we've been talking about between brands and creators and users differ in comparison to the global differences?
So the Middle East, or the MENA region in general, is known to be one of the most highly engaged communities. I can give you a couple of examples in terms of MENA-specific kind of statistics. Let's take retail and e-commerce. It's a broad industry, but let's double-click a bit on it. If you take, for example, tech, which is part of retail and e-commerce. In the Middle East, in the past year, the content that is related to tech increased by 302%, which means it tripled. So there are 3 times more content related to tech this year versus in the prior year. And some of the trends that we witness there specifically in the region are as seen on TikTok gadgets. And these are appliances, for example, that are TikTok famous appliances is another hashtag, for example. So that's one of the things that we see. If we take another category that is also under retail and e-commerce, which is food, the content around food has doubled in the Middle East specifically versus the prior year. We see amazing trends when it comes to food. I think many people might be familiar with feta pasta and how feta went off the shelves. But then in the prior year, it moved to salmon rice bowls by a TikTok creator called Emily Marico. And most recently, in the past couple of weeks, if you don't know what it's corn implies, then you haven't been spending time on TikTok. Yeah, it's the most beautiful thing.
So would you say the user penetration here in the region in comparison globally, as you said, the Middle East is a highly engaged audience already, and especially in the Gulf, very high mobile phone penetration as well. How do you see TikTok in terms of user penetration in the region, and where do you see in terms of your growth trajectory? I know before we sat down here, you mentioned to me the meteoric growth that you've already been through. Yeah. Where do you see for TikTok in the future in the region?
So the way we see it is that we continue seeing highly engaged communities that are embracing our platform. The growth has been referred to as exponential versus linear growth. Without necessarily getting into the numbers, now we see that communities continue growing on our platform, specifically in key markets like Saudi Arabia, like United Arab Emirates. More and more people are embracing the platform and are also spending more time on it on a daily basis. because it is one of the very few platforms that is purpose-driven in the way that we have a mission and we know what we stand for. So we're all about inspiring creativity and bringing joy. And the more that you feel that your creativity is being inspired and that you feel joyful, the more likely you are to spend time on the platform.
Given where you sit in this conversation personally, I thought it might be interesting as well if we could take a moment here to pick your brain in terms of advice that you could give to brands and businesses in the region in terms of how they could leverage their presence on TikTok. What advice would you give to these businesses?
So our advice is always balance, to be honest. We believe in balance in everything that we do, especially when it comes to working with our partners. We believe in doing a balance of acquisition and retention. We believe in the balance between upper funnel or brand building and lower funnel, which is driving conversion and sales. I think too much of an extreme on either strategy always leads to suboptimal results across any platform. So we believe in driving that balance. And in that spirit of balance, our advice is for brands that haven't yet maybe embraced the platform, although most of the partners in the ecosystem, to be honest, have, don't be intimidated. So it's quite easy to get started on our platform. Yes, it's a platform about inspiring creativity and bringing joy, but you can start. You can start somewhere. You can even start advertising on TikTok before you set up your own organic content. There are myriad of ways and different advertising solutions. So in a nutshell, what I would say is get in touch. That's the easiest advice, because we have a team of very dedicated client solution managers and client partners whose role is to be able to support businesses and brands to get on our platform and, most importantly, see the results that they are looking forward to.
Do you feel, given the role of technology in the retail ecosystem, that we've seen a fundamental change in how that retail ecosystem is going to function, and also in how that relationship between brands and consumers is going to exist moving forward? And if so, what do you see in the future?
So the future is something we're super passionate about. Like, we love this conversation. And because we believe that the answer is quite nuanced and it's difficult to conclude it in a few statements, we are starting our own podcast, which I'm happy to announce on September 15th under the name of Future of Retail. We believe that the future is not one size fits all. There are so many interesting things happening in the space of retail and e-commerce. Part of the podcast, we've already filmed a few episodes with the CEO, for example, of Yoox Net-a-Porter, with the Chief E-commerce Officer of Chalhoub Group. We're seeing completely different trends that are defining the future of retail. In the space of Net-a-Porter, for example, Nisreen Sher speaks about sustainability and how the future of retail and e-commerce, in her view, is all about sustainable fashion. In the case of Sixth Street, Darmin Ved, CEO of Sixth Street from Apparel Group, they just launched the first phygital store in the Middle East, and it's all about customer experience. So it's about avoiding the gimmicks that come with traditionally what you think of as the future of retail, like smart mirrors, and going for an elevated customer experience in an offline store that mirrors what you enjoy about the online experience. In the case of other guests that we've had, it's all about what is the future of supply chain, what's the future of being able to move from e-commerce to quick commerce, delivering things within 15 minutes versus waiting for it to come the next day. So to summarize all of this...
I mean, that's quite a lot.
It's a lot. We're launching this podcast under the name of Future of Retail. And the headline of everything is there is a move from transactional into interactional. And this would be the summary for me, is how do we move from transactional just experiences of you sell me something, I buy something from you, into an interaction where there's the consumer is much more engaged as part of a community of the items that he or she is purchasing, basically. So that is a common theme across when it comes to the future of retail.
That's interesting, because I was about to ask you there about communities. Do you feel that this building of communities is going to be key in the future, and that it's something that all brands need to be looking into, is building a community around their own
Absolutely,
products.
absolutely. And a brand doesn't need to take the responsibility of building that community from scratch, because more often than none, that community already exists. And to be honest, the brand is part of it, even though if the brand team aren't aware. So there are so many brands that were very surprised when we started working together that their brand is already on TikTok, even if they're not the ones posting about it, but it's part of the conversations. Like, you go to a store, you have a nice experience or special experience that triggers any sort of emotion in you, you're going to post about it. And then the people who are interested in the same thing, which we call community, will comment. And we've seen so many TikToks where the number of likes on a comment are higher than the number of likes on the video itself. And this is why we mean it's like a digital campfire, as in people are really talking to one another when it comes to TikTok. And that's why you see really high levels of engagement on our platform.
Okay, with that, it just exists to thank you very much for joining us here today, and to thank you as well for joining us once more for AB in Focus.